A long time ago, in a hot and bustling marketplace, two vendors set up stalls by the street to sell apples. An old grandfather sold large and sweet apples. Not only was he honest in weighing them, but he also let customers choose their own apples. Whenever he met poor children, he would generously give them apples for free. "Come, come, come! Have some apples! Ha ha ha!" The grandfather called out warmly. "Thank you, Grandpa." A little child replied. "Eat up and walk carefully," the grandfather said gently. Meanwhile, the young vendor across the street was very greedy. He often shortchanged customers and even sold apples that were infested with worms. As a result, his business became quieter day by day. One day, he saw how successful the old grandfather's business was. Customers kept flocking to his stall, and his apples were selling better and better. The young man grew jealous and started scheming. He lowered the price of his apples from 10 coins per gin to 9 coins. Then, he arranged the fresh apples facing outward, while hiding the worm-infested side toward himself. He also kept sprinkling water on the apples to make them look fresher and shinier. Once everything was ready, he started shouting loudly to attract buyers. "But big apples for only 9 coins per gin. Come and buy, buy, buy," he yelled. Hearing the low price, people rushed over to purchase. His sales skyrocketed and his money pouch grew heavier. But his greed knew no bounds. When he saw a blind woman passing by, he easily deceived her. "Ma'am, I'll pick the best apples for you. These are the finest ones," he said with a sly smile. "All right, I trust you," the woman replied without suspicion. And so, the young vendor grew richer through his deceit, while the old grandfather continued to sell with honesty and kindness. It's quite a generous portion. Here's another one for you." "Thanks." As evening approached, the old man slowly packed up his stall, while the young man beside him had sold all his apples. He strung together the copper coins he had earned today and tightly fastened them around his waist, as if afraid someone might snatch them away. The old man wrapped his earnings in a piece of cloth, and together, they headed to the riverbank to wait for the ferry. Upon seeing that the fare was 1 won per person, the merchant muttered under his breath, complaining about the price. The young man cheerfully said, "Oh, please have an apple. I only charge 1 won per apple. Thank you." He then added, "Consider those 2 apples as my ferry fare." Once again, the young man cleverly avoided paying for the boat ride. Perhaps even the heavens couldn't stand it anymore, for suddenly strong winds arose, dark clouds gathered, and towering waves crashed across the river. The small boat was thrown against the rocks, and in an instant, all 3 passengers were tossed into the water. Panicked, the young man instinctively reached for his waist, and, upon feeling his money pouch, relaxed slightly. Meanwhile, the old man realized he was sinking deeper. It didn't take long for him to understand that his heavy money pouch was dragging him down. Without hesitation, he threw it away. Hey, don't! I need that!" the young merchant cried out, ignoring the old man's warning. The greedy young merchant dived after the pouch, tied it tightly around his waist, and secured it with a dead knot. But when he surfaced, he found himself unable to swim. The weight of the money was simply too much. Meanwhile, the text seems to be cut off here. Let me know if you need the continuation or any adjustments. The man and the boatman had safely reached the shore, leaving only the small merchant struggling in the river, crying out for help. He was swept into the water by the huge waves. It was only then that he realized he had to untie his money pouch. However, he had tied it too tightly in front of him, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't loosen it. In the end, he slowly sank to the bottom of the river, struggling desperately. "Help! Someone help me!" he cried. 2 young men, skilled swimmers, rushed in to save him. They quickly pulled the merchant to shore, but he had been underwater for too long. The people around did not know modern resuscitation techniques. Gasping for his final breath, the greedy merchant reached for his money pouch, then passed away. "Oh, he's dead." As the men tried to untie his pouch, they discovered that he had hidden a large copper coin inside. Seeing this, everyone shook their heads. As the saying goes, a gentleman loves wealth but acquires it righteously. Excessive greed only leads to self-destruction.